What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Let's just get to it. The whole secular sacred divide. There is no distinction in the scriptures. Some of us have trust issues with God, and some of us, it's like, does God really got us? You can't engage the culture with the gospel that first has not engaged you. Like, you know how people are like, oh, that's just who I am. Nah.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Shaping the code.
Talking like they know me, they don't know the half. I'm like Owen Hart, mixed inside a Noah's Ark. I had battles in the dark, why you so alarmed? See the battles and the scars, had to go to class. Tamagotchi in my pocket, why you holding off?
What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Hope all is well with you guys. Listen, fam, we've got an exciting guest with us today. This man is a legend in his own right. He's a husband, a father, pastor, leader, phenomenal communicator, and now podcaster. We got none other than Pastor Vance Smith with us. Welcome to the podcast, bro.
Man, thank you. I appreciate you. That was an epic introduction. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Of course, bro. We've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm glad we got some time, carved out some time to actually get this going. I'm excited for the conversation.
Me too, man.
Yeah, so I know a little bit about who you are, but our guest listeners might not know. So for those who don't have a context for who you are, can you just give us a little bit of a background? Tell us a little bit about yourself, hobbies, what you love, how you got into pastoring, all that good stuff.
Yes, well, we can start from the beginning. I was born on a cold November day. I remember the weather. No, I'm kidding. I've been through a lot of different seasons of life, but right now I am a pastor.
Yeah.
So I oversee the young adult ministry at my church in Atlanta. It's a church called Victory.
Yeah.
We meet every Tuesday night with a bunch of 18 to 30-year-olds. And so that is what I do for work. I do that alongside my wife. We've been married it'll be 4 years in June. And then in June, also, our son will be 1 year old.
Wow.
And so I am pastoring, I'm husbanding, I'm parenting, doing all the things. And I'm also starting my own podcast as well. Just trying to get more good content out there.
I love
and
it.
So there's a lot of different seasons of my life, a lot of different things that I've done, but that is the kind of overall glimpse of where I'm at right now.
That's dope. Sounds like June is a big month for your family.
It is, man. Yeah. So my son was born on June 19th last year. So he was born on Juneteenth, which was also Father's Day.
Oh, wow.
And 10 days before our anniversary. So yes, June is definitely a big month for us.
That's awesome.
And it's probably an expensive one.
That's right. You got to make that work somehow, some way. You're pastoring to ministry. You got to figure out that budget.
Dude, yes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, I want to ask you some questions around leadership, pastoring. I've never gotten a chance to come to Victory Church or check out Young. I know I've been wanting to. Every time I'm in Atlanta, I'm like, man, this is going to be the time. I've got some friends that go to the services Tuesday night, and they've said nothing but great things about it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I just kind of wanted to ask, like, what was the journey to pastoring? Is that something that you had always envisioned for yourself? Was it just maximizing one season and it leading to another thing that eventually led you to pastoring? Or what was that like?
That's a great question. It was a lifelong journey, I will say. I'm going to be 5 this year, and I started pastoring at 30. And so before that was kind of a long journey. I grew up in church, and I grew up in Long Island, New York.
Okay.
And then my family moved to Atlanta when I was like in the middle of high school. And moving to Atlanta, a few things happened. But one of them was we left the church that we were at, and we were kind of like, parents were kind of like looking for a church. I wouldn't even say we were looking for a church. I wasn't actively looking for a church when I moved to Atlanta in high school, but my parents were. And so that's, in hindsight, that's where I'm able to look back and see that that's definitely where a shift happened for me. I won't say completely, because even in the church that I grew up in, I wasn't like super connected to what was happening.
Yeah.
We were connected in the sense that like these were people that I had grown up with for a long time, and they
Yeah.
were like family. But when it comes to like knowing Jesus,
Yeah.
I don't even remember much of what I learned, to be
Mm.
real. Like in
Yeah.
church growing up,
Yeah.
I know what I learned from my parents. My parents are solid believers.
Yeah.
But when high school happened, when I moved states, and then we're not in like a steady church,
Yeah.
I just kind of went solo Christianity, if you will. I wasn't like in a youth group or anything like that. That
Yeah.
is actually very popular in the South, not as
Yeah.
popular in the North. But in the South, I learned like there's like, few hundred person, thousand person youth
Yeah.
groups all over the place that I didn't know about
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I was in high school. And so I was like, it was like me trying to be a Christian, a couple of people that I knew kind of trying to be Christians, but like I was hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold,
Yeah.
where I would get on fire for God
Yeah.
and then just kind of simmer out, sizzle out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then went to college, and literally my first year after getting into some interesting sin my senior year,
Yeah.
I decided to rededicate my life, in my freshman year going into college.
Yeah.
And then that lasted like 6 months or so,
In
and
college.
college happened,
Yeah.
and, started partying and all that. Some of that was the fact that when I first got to school, I actually had like a community of people
Mm.
that I was connecting with, and then they all kinda started getting picked off, picked off, picked off.
Yeah.
And so the community dissipated,
Yeah.
and then it was kinda over with for me too at a
Yeah.
certain point.
Yeah.
And after that, man,
Mm.
was a combination of me being in college.
Mm.
I was also kind of discovering what my giftings and stuff were. So I was
Right.
going to school for marketing, but I didn't really like envision myself going and working at really anywhere. I didn't really want a job. I always wanted to work for myself. And
Yeah.
I was also getting into different like creative giftings. And so I was doing a lot of spoken word poetry
Yeah.
in college. And so I was at like all the open mics in my city and then in Atlanta. And so I really was like, just kind of honing that, man, having fun with it. Then I
Yeah.
started getting into music.
Yeah.
And so I was doing music with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He sang, I rapped, like the poetry kind of turned into rapping,
Yeah.
and connecting with him singing.
Yeah.
And when we started doing that, I was like, oh, I think I really actually want to try this. And then he actually decided to focus on acting. And
Mm.
so he was like in the theater program down there, and but he also sang, but he decided to focus on the acting thing. That worked out for him. He's on Broadway right now.
Dope. Dope.
And but when he decided to do that, I'm like, well, I still actually like doing this music thing. I'm just going to try it. So I got an internship at a studio in the city I went to school in.
Yeah.
And I was just like recording people all the time, working on my own music. And that kind of set me on the trajectory to focus on music. And
Yeah.
so, really throughout college and after college,
Yeah.
for like a, a, a few years, I was just solely focused on music.
Yeah.
I won this competition in Atlanta on the radio, and my song went into rotation, which kind of got me into kind of breaking into the scene and whatnot. And then, long story short, I ended up signing this investment deal that I thought was going to be like really life changing,
Yeah.
but it went left. And so the dude kind of flaked
Oh
on
man.
some of the stuff that was supposed to come to me,
Yeah.
and it just like broke me
Yeah.
because I had been working for years,
Mm.
just like sacrificing and trying to focus on building the dream.
Right.
And then when I thought that I had reached it, it just crumbled,
Yeah.
and that broke me. And then the same year my sister had found this church called Victory, and I hadn't been in church in like 7 or 8 years,
Oh wow.
and wasn't even thinking about being in church.
Yeah.
And she invited me. She was like, I think this is something that you would actually like. And
Yeah.
so, man, I went, and I was like, I've never been in a church like this.
Mm.
Like, I didn't realize how contemporary churches had become.
Yeah. Yeah.
Genuinely, bro. Like the
Yeah.
church that I grew up in, I thought that all churches were like that.
Yeah.
Like they're not using the air conditioner. Like it's hot. I smell older people,
Yeah.
and the messages are not necessarily speaking to what I have going on right now. I
Yeah.
get to Victory and I'm like, yo, the temperature is like perfect in
Yeah.
here. I feel like I have space to breathe in
Yeah.
here. And then when I heard the message,
Mm.
um, it just resonated with me because it woke up that part inside of me that always enjoyed reading the Bible and studying the Bible.
Wow.
And I he was preaching a sermon on the Lord's Prayer. And I was like, I've heard this passage of scripture like my whole life, but never really understood it.
Yeah.
And it just woke something up inside of me. So the those two things kind of converging, like me coming back to church and my dreams kind of falling apart,
Yeah.
happening at the same time, just set my life on a different trajectory.
Yeah.
And I just got as immersed in the church as I could
Yeah.
because I'm like, all right, I'm trying to come out of the world.
Yeah.
I was in the clubs like multiple nights out of every week,
Right.
and I'm like, because that's the music scene in Atlanta.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
so I'm like, now I'm having to make a whole different life change. And so, yeah, environment wise, I just tried to immerse myself in the church as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then I moved away for
Okay.
work. I moved to Birmingham, Alabama
Oh
for like
wow.
2 years for work. And long story short there, uh, I felt like God was calling me to come back to Atlanta,
Mm.
specifically to come back to Victory, not to do ministry. I still didn't foresee myself ever doing ministry. I
Yeah.
thought that I was going the entrepreneurship route.
Sheesh. Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, I felt like God was calling me back to Victory and to
Mm.
serve in Victory. And
Yeah.
so I came back, I moved back, man, and I got involved. I started serving with the youth ministry. I didn't even expect to, but I was at a young adults service,
Yeah.
and I felt like God was speaking to me about kind of what the next season of my life was going to be.
Yeah.
And I had been getting certified as a personal trainer for fun. Like I never expected
Mm.
to do it like for my
Professional.
career because I had a career at the time.
Yeah.
I was working in logistics and doing sales and stuff, and I wanted to go out on my own. So I'm in Fusion one night and asking God, like, all right, I just moved. I left my job. Like, what now? And I felt like he was like, okay, this certification you've been getting for fun, like, that's actually the next season of your life.
Mm.
Like, it's an avenue for ministry for you to connect with people one on one.
Wow.
I got invited to come serve in the youth ministry, and I just was serving in there. And I met my now wife
Hey.
on Instagram, like right
Yeah.
around this same time. So it was a whole like interesting season of life where I left this really steady job
Yeah.
and now I meet this girl I want to marry when I'm
Yeah.
like trying to like do personal training and trying to figure it out. And so
Right.
it was like a wilderness season, bro. But
Yeah.
so 3.5 years we dated long distance. I was working, doing personal training stuff, but also working on entrepreneurial ventures. So like even putting my marketing degree to work. So I had like this consulting agency that I was
Wow.
building with a friend. And then out of nowhere,
Mm.
in some ways out of nowhere,
Yeah.
but I'm for the sake of the fact that you need to talk at some point in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh no, this is good. This is good. I love it.
um, Out of nowhere, the youth, the lady who was directing all of our youth and young adult ministry, she sat me down one night after I had gotten like the biggest check that I had gotten for any of my like entrepreneurial ventures,
Yeah.
like 2 weeks before this, and she sits me down like, "Hey, you're being considered as the next young adult pastor." I'm like,
Wow.
"What?
Yeah.
By who?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And and that came, I say out of nowhere, but at the same time, man, like God was stirring a lot in me ministry wise. I was really connected and committed to that youth ministry
Yeah.
and the church, but I thought that I would be doing ministry like out of just the heart. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Not
Right.
ever vocationally. I didn't
Yeah.
foresee myself working for a church. I just didn't see it, man. And
Yeah.
especially without having the resume and on all
Yeah.
those things, I didn't think that those things would ever come together. But I loved studying the Bible, loved teaching the Bible, loved
Yeah.
connecting with people and helping people figure life out.
Yeah.
And so I thought that I'd be like teaching Bible studies or whatever it was, it's
Yeah.
maybe speaking here and there, but I definitely did not think that I would be coming on staff as a pastor. And they put me over this, significant size ministry with
Yeah.
no ministry experience, but a lot of my
Mm.
experiences, just work wise, and then even I don't even want to say some ministry stuff, but um, between biblical knowledge,
Yeah.
some ministry experience, and then work experience, it actually was kind of the perfect fit
Sheesh.
for me. And so I've been doing that for the last 5 years.
Wow.
That's how I became a pastor.
That's incredible. There's so much I want to talk about from hearing your story.
Yeah,
I love it because like it's just like God, right? I think like we've all heard the saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans or what have you.
facts.
And
Yeah,
for you, you're just living to know him. You're plugged into your local church. You have no ambition to lead the ministry that you're a part of. You just want to serve your local context. I mean, even before that, background in music, business, sales. You've got an entrepreneurial spirit. Like there's all these little things at play, and the way you summed up the whole story, God used it all in what you're doing now, which is a whole nother conversation to have. But I
yeah,
wanted to
bro.
ask you about the beauty of uh, just being present and not having to have your life figured out. I get it in some sense. You got to have a plan. I get it in some sense. You go on a date. It's like, what's your next 5 years? You wanna have something
Yeah,
written up, right? But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
at the very same time, it's like you couldn't have planned where you're at right now, right? This was
No
not in
way.
the plans for you, but you're in the middle of God's will for your life, right? You're living out your purpose. And so maybe speak to the young adult, maybe the high school student, or maybe the 30-year-old who's in the middle of transition. Even my dad. My dad he just turned 60. He's in a season of transition, trying to figure out
Man.
what's next. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just speak to like the beauty of embracing the present and trusting that God has our tomorrow in his hands.
Man, that's so good. Um, I think that there is a level of uncertainty required to walk with God,
Yeah, that's good, man.
because you can't have faith without uncertainty. I was
Yeah.
talking about this with my friend recently, that uncertainty is what opens the door for faith,
Mm,
because it's about what's not seen, what we cannot see, what we are hoping for, but our eyes don't tell us that we're certain of it, right?
right,
It's like
right.
there's something inside of us that tells us that we are certain of this.
Yeah,
And even, when I was going through this season of trying to figure out what to do,
yeah,
I was like, it was difficult because I'm like, yo, I'm making real life decisions. Like, God, you're talking about me being a personal trainer.
yeah,
Like, this is not a simulation. This is my real life. And
yeah,
I want to get married to this girl
yeah.
and don't have the finances for it when a year ago I
Mm,
did.
wow.
And so if I'm going to make these decisions, I need to know this is you.
Yeah,
And I got this job offer. I got two job offers for gyms, which were very humbling experiences for me,
yeah.
because I was really like anti working for people. And now looking back, it's like I needed
Yeah,
to be humbled,
yeah, yeah,
but I didn't realize how much. But I had these job offers, and I'm like, okay, so with this this
yes,
this offer over here is going to be more money, more security,
yeah,
but it's not going to have my schedule
mm,
in a place that I can do the other things that I need to do, like serving in the church
right,
and building these other things that I feel like God is calling me to build.
yeah,
And then this other offer was going to be less money,
mm,
but I'd have more freedom to build something
yeah,
in the midst of doing it. And I remember praying, I'm like, God, okay, now I got this girl I want to marry,
yeah,
and I need to know, like, am I just, even all this entrepreneurial stuff, like, is this just in my head? Like, do I think I'm better at this than I really am?
that's
Like, is
real,
this
man.
something you've put in me, or
Yeah,
is this something I'm trying to make happen
mm,
because I'm now having to make real weighty decisions based on it?
yeah,
And and I opened my Bible. I literally opened my Bible to a passage in John where Jesus is talking to these two blind men, and he says to them, according to your faith, let it be done unto you.
wow,
And I'm like, oh, that's
wow.
interesting. But I need more than that, God. Literally. I'm like, this is
Yeah,
probably more than a coincidence,
yeah,
but I need more than that. And so I was like, I need to know.
mm,
And so I actually looked up, I went and studied that word faith, and it's this
mm,
Greek word pistis,
mm,
and it refers to, What Jesus means when he says faith is beautiful, man.
Yeah.
It's not this thing that you try hard to believe. That's how it's presented to us a lot of times. It's like if you believe enough,
Yeah.
then if you believe hard enough, then this thing will happen.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's talking about.
Mm.
When he says, according to your faith, let it be done unto you, pistis, faith, biblical faith is not, it doesn't originate in the human will
Mm.
or desire or the human mind. It's actually something that is placed in you by God to
Wow.
steer you toward his will and his
Wow.
desire. So
Wow.
there are things inside of you that God has placed there to like pull you, like there's a gravitational
Mm.
pull on your life towards where God wants to take you.
Wow.
And it doesn't, it may not be seeming like it's manifesting in front of you at the moment,
Yeah.
but you still feel like, man, I just feel like this is in me. Like I feel like even though my circumstances don't say that I'm supposed to be there, I feel
Right.
like I'm supposed to be there. I feel like I have this capability, even if somebody else said that I don't. Man, I was under, a youth pastor who I love very much, but he did not think very highly of my speaking capabilities
Wow. Yeah.
and told me like several times. He was like, yeah, man, you might want to like actually, do the music thing again, and maybe like you could like perform and then
Man.
preach or something, because the communication skills aren't up to par. But something in me was just like, I know what you see, but I know what I see, and I also know me. I know that I'm starting out,
Yeah.
and I know that where I'm at right now is not ultimately where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And so, but in that moment where I was making the decision for that job, that was so comforting to me, because it was a lesson in walking with Jesus.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that's what we see in his life,
Yeah.
is he's living with a vision that like doesn't seem to be manifesting in front of him.
Yeah.
He's the Messiah,
Yeah.
but he's
Yeah.
walking around like not respected by all these people,
Right. That's good, man.
hugely misunderstood.
Yeah.
He's a man of sorrows and suffering,
Yeah.
lowly, gentle, and yeah, man. So
Yeah.
for me, my encouragement to anybody is, man, welcome to life.
Yeah.
Like whether you're in a transition season or not, like
Yeah.
you can, even if you're in a season that you feel like is a mountaintop season right now,
Right.
you still know there's a future ahead of you. There's still some level of uncertainty in your life if you're walking with God. I've
Right.
found that he just builds that in,
Yes.
because if we get into circumstances that make us feel no sense of need,
Mm.
then we actually lose one of the beautiful things about our relationship with him, is this dependence on him, is this
Yes.
ability to see him come through for us. And so
Yes.
I'm just finding that like as I'm getting closer to him, as I'm going through life, that I can expect for my life to be uncertain, and uncertain in the sense of my circumstances are not direct indicators of where I'm going or what God has for me, but
Yeah.
his word
Yeah.
is a direct indicator, right?
Yeah.
And even the prophetic things that have been spoken over my life, man, I hold on to those things that truly resonate with me,
Yeah.
because that's the gift that God has given.
That's good,
The,
man.
the Bible tells us that prophecy is to build up.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're all walking around with circumstances that are telling us one thing,
Mm.
and then we need the voice of God to tell us, I
Come
do
on,
have more
man.
for you.
Yeah.
Even though you're going through something challenging, I do have more for you. This is not the end for you.
Yeah.
All those things. And so I embrace the voice of God in the midst of my circumstances, and
Yeah.
I try to not let my circumstances define the vision that I have for my life. So,
Man, boy, you preaching. My goodness. That was so good, bro. I'm taking notes for myself.
oh
Uh
man,
that's so good. There's another man, again, there's so many different things I can pick apart from what you shared, but I want to hone in on one of the things that you talked about. And pistis, right? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
yep,
Pistis Faith. J. Cole just, J. Cole doesn't do a lot of interviews, but he had an interview that got dropped this week that I watched, and
okay,
he was talking about, they were asking, did you always know you'll make it as a rapper?
mm,
And he was saying yes and no. You've got to
yeah,
have like a level of delusion to yourself, you,
hmm,
like it's actually crazy to think that you could be one of the greatest rappers of all time. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm a church planter. and I was having a
Got you.
conversation with another church planter, and he was sharing with me that in order to plant a church, you need two C's. You need to be called, and you got to have a little bit of crazy to you, right? Like calling and crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm just thinking about what your youth pastor said, and I know he didn't mean any ill intent or anything like that, but you know, we do have, whether it's God, you feel God is calling us to plant a church, or God is calling us to write a book, or God's calling us to start a podcast, or God's calling us to get married, whatever it is. And everything around us is saying that you're not equipped for it, or you're not
Mm.
the person for it. You're not as charismatic. You're not as good looking. You're not as experienced. You don't got the resume. You don't have the
Mm.
network. You don't have the money in your bank. Like, we have so many reasons why we can forfeit the call of God on our lives.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, like, what's what has been the biggest thing that you've had to embrace? Maybe it's a discipline, maybe it's a thought, maybe it's a Bible verse you meditated on, um, in order to live out pistis, right? Like, what helped you build pistis, that faith within you, to recognize and to hold fast to what God was calling you ultimately to?
Man, that's a phenomenal question. You ask great questions, bro. This
I
is
appreciate
a,
that.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
So the primary thing that I feel like has helped me in my journey with God,
yeah,
it started around that same time that all of this was stirring, right?
mm,
Around 2015, 2016. There are other elements to the story, like I'm like, do I even go into it? I was about to throw that in there for random, like just entertainment and make people go, huh? Like, yeah, I got featured in a magazine, then I got asked to be on a reality show and almost
wow,
went through with it. It was like
yeah,
all this stuff, right?
yeah,
And in the midst of this, I got some people telling me, hey, you should go this direction. I got some people telling me, hey, you should go this direction. And I needed to hear God. And that is the
mm,
number one thing for me
yeah,
is if we talk about a discipline, the discipline is
yeah,
consistently positioning myself to
mm,
hear God
wow, that's good, man.
is my lifeline in life because we're making real decisions. Like if you're talking about planting a church,
Yeah, man.
bro, that's a huge decision, right? And
Yeah,
like pastoring people, like
yeah,
we got to hear God.
yeah,
But that's anything, man. If we are choosing to move to a city, if we're choosing to take
yeah,
a job, stay at our job, leave our
yeah,
job, if we're choosing a spouse, whether to get married, when to get married, we need to hear God
yeah,
on everything in life. And around this same time that all this stuff was stirring for me, I felt
mm,
God speaking to me
wow,
that I should start writing stuff down that he speaks to me.
mm,
As simple as that is,
yeah,
it would and primarily from in the sense of when I'm studying something in scripture
yeah,
and I get a revelation about it, I need
yeah,
to write that down.
yeah,
And it seemed like a very, very, very simple like thing. And honestly, it was something that I was too lazy to do for a long time
yeah,
because I didn't feel like doing it. And like to
interesting.
the point that I remember, man, I vividly remember standing in my kitchen and being like, all right, God, I hear you because I got these thoughts going in my head
Yeah,
and I feel like I should write it down. I'm gonna write it in my phone. And I felt like he was like, no, hand write it. And I'm like, this is
mm,
ridiculous. You know, and even in the midst of all this, you're asking yourself, like, is this God? Is it me? Like,
yeah,
what is going on?
yeah,
But I feel like I keep getting this nudge, like I need to write, and I don't want to. And so
yeah,
I'm fighting it. And I fought it for like a year, bro, where I
wow,
wrestled. I mean, like a year
yeah,
of me just being like, I don't know. I don't know. And like, okay, I'll write a little something down here.
yeah,
And then when I finally embraced it,
mm,
it's like I sat down one day
mm,
and was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this. As and it's crazy that it took me this long to get to this place,
yeah,
but I sat down, I was reading my Bible, and a verse stuck out to me,
yeah,
and I just wrote down the verse, and then I wrote down what was coming to my mind about it. And as I
mm,
was writing it down, more stuff started unfolding.
wow,
And I'm like, oh, the revelation is kind of expanding as I write.
mm,
And that has become my lifeline in life.
yeah,
Like that is the thing, the Pareto principle, 20% of your effort gets you 80% of your results, and 20% of the people do 80% of the work, all that 80-20 stuff that people
yeah,
talk. For me, that's the 20% that gets 80%
Wow.
of what I need done in life. It's when I wake up in the morning, and I just preached on Tuesday about seeking God,
Mm,
and why we don't is because we question like what we're actually going to get from it. Even myself,
mm,
now having a son and like
yeah.
sleep not being as guaranteed, it's difficult. And sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know if I should get up or if I should just keep sleeping. And
Yeah.
something inside of us is saying like, is this a withdrawal or a deposit? Like,
Wow.
am I giving something to God, or am I getting
Yeah.
something from Him?
Yeah.
And but I've found that it's always a deposit, bro. Like, I'm always getting something from God in that space that I
Yeah.
need. And so me doing that on a consistent basis flows into everything in my life. From
Yeah.
preaching is so much easier
Yeah.
when I'm spending time with God regularly in the morning and getting just downloads from Him, but
Right.
not with a strategy in mind. Like, what
Yeah.
I'm reading
That's
is
good,
not
man.
sermon prep,
That's
it's
good,
just
man.
time with God.
That's
And so
good.
this might go into a sermon. It might go into a sermon a year from now.
Right.
It might just equip me for a conversation with my wife. It
Right.
might it might equip me for this podcast I'm going into. Whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
it's like God giving God an opportunity to speak. And so that's when I say positioning myself to hear God
Yeah,
in a
man.
very practical way. That's what I'm doing. It's not just waking up and reading a Bible verse for the day. It's,
Yeah.
man, I'm going to wake up. And you know what helped me with this? The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by
Hurry,
John
John
Mark
Mark
Comer
Comer. It's a good book.
helped me a ton. Oh man, amazing. And uh just the mindset behind entering time with God and delighting in Him and resting in Him, and it not feeling like this work. And so
Yeah.
that's why even with discipline, I try not to use that so much anymore when it comes to spending time with God, because we need spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
But when we just view it as a discipline, it looks like a sacrifice that we're just making, sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it's really sustenance, bro. Like,
That's
it
good, man.
really is
Yeah.
like what I need for direction for the day, insight, wisdom. And so, um, yeah, bro, I think that's like the number one key is
Yeah.
positioning yourself to hear from God on a
Yeah.
regular basis. Regular basis. The more you do it, the
Yeah.
more you'll hear Him, and He
Yeah.
always shows up. He
That's
always speaks, and
good.
it's always helpful.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's a word. That's a word. Listen, I
Yeah.
feel like I can sit here and have a conversation with you all day long. But I want
I'm
to,
loving it, bro.
yeah, I want to respect your time, but I do want to ask one last question and
Okay.
take however much time you want to answer it. I remember one day, this was maybe, like 3, 4 years back now. There's a guy that I was discipling, and he came into my office, and he's also an entrepreneur. He's someone that he's trying to make it in life. Trying to
Hmm.
secure the bag,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
all that good stuff. And I was just like, hey, bro, do you trust God with all of
Mm,
that? And it just,
mm.
that question turned into like a 5 hour conversation, literally 5 hour long conversation. But at the
I believe
crux
it.
of it, at the root of it, what I found out was he took responsibility for his own life, or he felt like he had to take it upon himself to make it, because he
Yeah,
didn't trust that God was going to give him the life that was going to ultimately bring him the fulfillment and joy that he believed he needed.
yeah,
And I'll never forget that conversation, because it was a reminder to me, like when I take control of my life, maybe I'm saying to God, I don't trust what you have for me ultimately.
yeah,
When I'm obsessing over something, or when I'm trying to take control of something, when I really get upset about something not going a certain way, that's always in my own heart an indication that there's a part of my life that I have not surrendered to God. There's
yeah.
something about my life I've not trusted God with. I heard someone once say, the root of all disobedience is unbelief. And so if we're
Mm,
falling short in an area, it's because we fail to believe God to be good over that area, and we just kind of take over or whatnot. And in the light of our conversation, hearing your testimony, hearing your journey to believing that God had called you to something, and fighting to obtain that, whether it's the discipline of being in His presence or writing things out. I just see that there was a surrender in order for you to be where you are today. What would be your
yeah.
encouragement to those listening um, to this conversation? about trusting God, and though it might not go the way we had planned, or maybe it's not
Yeah.
going the way we're planning right now. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about your wilderness season that you talked about before
Dude.
but yeah, what would be your advice to encourage people to trust God and trust the process and know that what He has for us ultimately is better than whatever we can plan for our lives?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I think that's the biggest battle
Yeah,
that we're going to face
yeah.
as a believer. That's what kept me from following God. I
Mm,
was running from him for a long time because I didn't believe
wow,
that what he had for me would make me happy
wow.
or fulfill me. I felt like
Yeah,
he was going to have me do something corny
yeah,
or like just something I didn't want to do.
yeah.
And then, but over time, man, I've learned that God created me.
Mm,
And
mm,
so this idea that I can come up with a better plan
wow.
for what he's created
Yeah,
is kind of ludicrous. You
yeah.
know, he
That's
created you
right.
to even like the stuff you like. So
Right.
like why would he not factor that into his plan for you? No, your life is not going to come without challenges.
Yeah,
Your life is actually going to come with challenges, especially following Jesus,
yeah.
because he says, I mean, that we're going to face some of the highest challenges of anybody. You
Right,
know, take up your cross
right.
and follow him.
Yeah,
But why would we do that? Scripture
right.
says that Jesus did it for the joy that was set before
That's
him,
good, man.
that it was
Yeah,
for the joy that was set before him. And I believe that that's the only reason that God came for us. Jesus said
yes.
that he came so that we would have life and have it to the full.
Yeah,
Meaning, like, if he didn't come, we couldn't have life to the full.
that's right.
Without him, we can't have life to the full.
Yeah.
And so, the vision that you and I come up with for our lives is so limited in comparison to what God has in store for our lives.
Yeah, man.
And we limit ourselves dramatically, man. Like if I
Yeah.
look at when I look back at like if I would have just followed my own plan,
Mm,
things would not have worked out
yeah.
this well. I
That's
may
right.
have more in one area,
Mm,
but then depleted in all these other areas. I wouldn't have the wife that I have right now. I'll tell
yeah.
you that,
Yeah,
which
man.
is like the biggest game changer for my life, for my son, for our future generations. Like
Yeah, man.
those are the types of things that are on the line,
Yeah.
and God knows those things. And so I've just come to understand that God knows what I like more than I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that I wouldn't like being a pastor, bro.
Yeah. That's
I
right.
wouldn't like I didn't think that I should be a pastor. And
Right.
this is the most fulfilling thing
Come
I've
on, man.
ever experienced.
That's so good, man.
Genuinely, I say that wholeheartedly. You know,
Yeah.
I understand. I shared this literally on Tuesday. This role that I have is a role of service to people,
Yeah.
and it's a role of service to God. There's high sacrifice that comes with it.
That's right.
Um, but bro,
Yeah.
I'm fulfilled.
Yeah,
This is
man.
for my good, man.
That's
It keeps
good.
me accountable. I
Mm,
think I'm literally genuinely a better man
mm,
because I'm a pastor than I
wow.
would be if I wasn't.
Wow.
And that's what I think, you know, sometimes we're running from roles in ministry because we see certain people fold and crumble under the pressure. But
Right.
I genuinely feel like even when I'm telling people about
Yeah.
serving in church helped me so much. Some of
Mm,
us, we want to get free from like sin and all this
yeah.
stuff.
That's good,
And
man.
some of it is just the fact that there's nobody we're accountable to. And I don't mean an accountability partner.
I feel
I
that.
mean, like, I knew it was different when I had kids waiting on me, like
Mm,
to hear from me, right?
that's good, man.
When I know I gotta go sit in front of this group of kids and have a conversation with them about Jesus,
Yeah.
it convicts me when I'm tempted to sin, right?
Yeah.
When I'm trying to walk with somebody else through the stuff they have going on. And so now, man, I got young adults who obviously God will take care of them whether I'm there or not, but
Right.
He's given me the
That's
responsibility
right.
to steward them, to shepherd them.
Yeah.
And so they're counting on me, and that helps me, bro.
Yeah.
Like the fact that when we're, bro, here in Atlanta,
Mm,
our church, man, people, I guess, are coming from all sides of the city because it feels like everywhere that I go, somebody knows me. And
yeah.
that is, it's annoying sometimes, but it's good for me, bro. It's
Yeah.
good for me. I can't go anywhere
Yeah.
and bro, there I have so many stories with that, but
Yeah.
it's good for me.
That's right, man.
You know, the things that we would run from, it's good for me because
Yeah.
it helps me to stay
Yeah, man.
integral and stay authentic and really like allow God to do the work in me so that I
Mm,
really am the person
mm,
that is equipped to lead and I really am a model to follow.
yeah,
Like
man.
it helps me. And so the road that I would have chosen for myself would have been easier. It would have been more flashy. Like it
Mm,
would have been easier in certain ways and then led to a bunch of destruction and downfall because that's what the enemy wants.
yeah.
And a lot of times it's just deception, man, that's
Yeah.
drawing us away from God. It's
Yes.
I won't even say a lot of times. It's only deception that would have us feeling like
That's
God is
real.
not good or his
That's
plan
real.
is not good.
That's
Like,
right.
how could his plan not be good?
Yeah, man.
How could it not be good? He's God. And so, how could this not fulfill you unless he created you to not be fulfilled?
Mm.
And so if he created you to be fulfilled, then his plan includes your fulfillment.
That's good,
And
bro.
so,
That's good.
so yeah, man, even when it's sacrifices, even when it's challenges, I look at the life of Jesus.
Yes.
Again, that's who we're following, right?
Yeah.
And you got even the people closest to him didn't understand him for most of his time here. You
Yeah.
see all the time, like, yeah, they didn't understand what he was saying. They didn't
Yeah.
understand what he was saying. And he's misunderstood most of this time, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of his time is spent serving and helping other people,
Yeah.
but would we say Jesus was not fulfilled? You
Mm.
know,
That's good,
I
man.
think Jesus is the most fulfilled
The
person. He
most.
totally accomplished his mission.
Yeah.
He equates us to his bride.
Yeah.
Like, he's got this glorious plan for all of eternity that required immense sacrifice on a very short term basis. It
Yeah.
was a few years,
Yeah.
in light of all of eternity. And I feel like that's the same thing that happens with us. And so
Yeah.
God's plan, it's definitely going to have challenges. It's going to have sacrifice. Those things bring him glory. Those things make us better. They
Yeah.
refine us because his plan includes us becoming better. And we don't get better as a result of easy circumstances.
Mm.
Like, there's never been like an easy time that made me a better person. It's just real. Like, it's
That's
always
right.
difficult times that have made me a better person.
That's right.
And so that's my encouragement, man. God is worth trusting. His
Yeah.
plan is good. His plan
Yeah.
includes your fulfillment, not just his. Because
Yes.
sometimes we think God is just selfish and just wants us to do stuff that makes him happy.
Yeah.
But that's not who he is. Like, he came for us.
Yeah.
Heaven wasn't boring.
Yeah.
God's not like bored without us or like
Yeah.
lacking without us, but it's us who needs him. And
Right.
we need purpose. We need fulfillment. We need these things. And this is how he's given it to us. And so
Yeah. Man.
that's my
That's
encouragement.
that's a word. His glory and for our good. I love that.
Yeah, bro.
I
Yeah, that's a
love
great way
it.
to sum it up.
Yeah, man. Bro, I so appreciate your time. We need to get you back on the
Bro,
podcast
I'd love
and
to.
do a part two or something because there's so
Please,
much here, so much nuggets that you gave us. So I appreciate your
bro.
wisdom. I appreciate your time, bro. And
I'm
I'm
honored.
I'm excited. After this conversation, I'm subscribing to your podcast, bro. I'm tuning in, bro. Just let me know when you drop,
Oh,
and I'm in
man.
that thing. So
Yo, I love it, man.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
yeah,
It's been an
man.
honor, bro. I really appreciate you reaching out,
Yeah,
and I appreciate you even wanting to have the conversation and
yeah,
and and leading this conversation the way that you did, bro. You're doing a great thing.
man. I
So I
appreciate that, man.
appreciate you, and I want us to connect more. When you're in Atlanta,
Yeah,
we need
man.
to just figure it out, bro.
Let's do it. Let's make that happen. We might have to do a live show in Atlanta.
Let's do it, bro.
Let's do
And even if we're
something.
not recording, bro, let's go grab lunch. Let's chop it
Hang out
up. Let's
for
just talk,
sure.
bro. I like talking to you.
Yeah, I like talking to you too, bro. This is good. This was good for my soul. I needed it. So appreciate you,
Same,
bro. Yeah, yeah.
man.
And so, but thank you for coming on. Hope you listeners got a thing or two. I know I did. And
I hope
Vance,
so.
let's do this. For those who want to stay connected to you, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at Vance_Smith.
Yeah.
You can find me on YouTube just by typing in Vance Smith.
Yeah.
But the main place you're gonna find me is Instagram. So
Awesome.
yeah, bro.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here. I hope this blessed y'all. Until next time, family, peace and grace.